To discuss the fall budget, I'm joined now by CTV political commentator Scott Reid. It's been a while. Great to chat with you, Scott. I want to get your reaction ahead of the fall budget. Obviously, this is going to be a big one. What do you think is going to come out of this? And do you think that the opposition or any of the opposition is going to support this and pass this budget?
I think the budget will pass. And the reason I think that is, if there's a party in the House of Commons right now that is most likely, not certain, but most likely to benefit from an immediate surprise election, it's probably the Liberals. I don't think you can safely conclude it's the Conservatives. It certainly wouldn't be the NDP or the Bloc. So ultimately, I think rationality will win the day, and some of those NDP members will either vote in favor of the budget or abstain, or some Bloc members will go missing and abstain. But look, there's no guarantees. In 1979, Joe Clark thought he had the votes. He didn't, and he was swept out of office. So you can never be certain in a minority parliament.
Well, given, I'm sure you would agree that a lot of Canadians maybe don't have the appetite for an election right now, but it was just, last week you had the Prime Minister coming out saying Canadians are going to have to sacrifice more. The Bank of Canada governor says that your standard of living is going to have to lowered. And a lot of people are going to be looking at that and say, listen, I've already struggled enough. The middle class is getting crushed. And it's been 7 months since the Prime Minister has held that position, and things are getting worse. Can you appreciate that maybe there might be an appetite for a lot of people to want to have an election?
I don't think there's an appetite for an election. No, I think people feel burdened. I think people are very anxious about the outlook for their jobs, for industry, and I think people are really freaked out. And we know what the two-word reason for that is: Donald Trump. However, I don't think the remedy is to have an election, and I don't think Canadians think the remedy is to have an election. So those who are seen as responsible for forcing us into an election on the eve of Christmas, I think would really, really be carrying a heavy weight in terms of rationalizing that to Canadians. Now, for all the reasons you wish, I think the budget's going to be fascinating. All the reasons you just outlined, I think the budget's going to be fascinating tomorrow because Nick's poll that you mentioned in the setup for this, Nick Nanos's poll, which says that, do you want big investments or do you want spending restraint? And the emphatic answer of Canadians is yes. And it sounds like the budget is going to give people that as well. It sounds like there's going to be massive, historic, major investments in things like infrastructure, energy development, that sort of stuff. But at the same time, I think you're going to see tons of federal public servants probably cut back. I think you're going to see a lot of the operational expenses of government cut back. So this is going to be a budget that in some respects is going to try to swim in two directions. We're cutting on the one hand, spending on the other, and we'll see how Canadians process that and what they conclude the budget is fundamentally about.
A lot of people are going to be looking at where they're going to cut. You had that survey I just announced, 30% say that reducing the deficit was their top answer. And we're spending roughly, I believe, like $54 billion to service just our debt, which is a couple $billion more than we actually spend on healthcare. Where do you think those massive, other than some of the public service and maybe CRA, where are these cuts going to come from, and how is that going to impact the day-to-day services of Canadians who are struggling?
Well, I mean, this is the challenge of being in government. Of course, if you ask Canadians what do they want, they're going to say, I want stronger healthcare, I want major investments in a whole series of areas that I think will produce more jobs and growth. But I also want the deficit to be radically reduced. That isn't going to happen, especially not in the face of crisis like we have now with our trade situation in the United States. Where do I think they're going to cut? Well, we know it isn't defense. We know it isn't going to be major energy infrastructure. We know it isn't going to be roads and highways and massive infrastructure like that. The cuts are going to come where they must, because the only line item left is the size of the federal public service. So you're going to see contracts ended for public servants. You're going to see a bunch of senior public servants offered packages to retire and to get out, try to reduce the size of the federal public service, which is swollen. You're going to see lots of programs, lots of grants and contributions, as they call them. Those are effectively federal subsidies to all sorts of different programs, activities, third parties, stakeholder groups. I think you're going to see those drawn back, cut radically. So I think you're going to see tens of billions of dollars cut out of the federal operational budget, but you're also going to see tens of billions of dollars invested in areas like defense and major infrastructure.
That's CTV's political commentator, Scott Reid. Appreciate your time. Thank you.